workflow. The project is called Agenda Management, and this week, as you noticed, the packet looks different with a different look and feel. The new platform will ultimately help users navigate district content easier and modernize the district brand. The project team is continuing to refine the tool to improve upon the overall user experience in time for the official launch, which is on November 12th with staff. After the November 12th in-house launch, the next step of the project is to train and implement at the commission level. This will take place through a study session on November 25th, where commissioners will be trained on how to use a related software called Agenda to Go on a district-issued iPad. Agenda to Go is an exclusive tool that will allow commissioners and leadership to essentially mark up the packet. You'll be able to highlight notes, add speaking points, write notes in the margin of this document. And to help us prepare for that November 25th meeting, we will be sending instructions for commissioners to install the Agenda to Go app on your district issued iPads. You will need your email and passwords to install the app. And of course, we will provide support to anyone who may need help. For those few commissioners who do not have an iPad, we have iPads for you and we'll make arrangements to get them to you with the apps installed. I will be sending an email with more information and instructions for the installation of the app in the next week. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. Michael, did you have any announcements?
Commissioner Hubble, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Any appearances by a member of the public? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on to the consent calendar, where we have the approval of minutes, review and approval of sewer extension plans, and the transaction authority for employee health care insurance through courts. Are there any questions on anything, on any of the items? There's a couple sewer extension plans, or I think. So hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Wilson, I'll move approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Okay,
I'll second it, Murphy.
Motion by Commissioner Wilson, seconded by Commissioner Murphy. All those in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, motion carries. I think I just saw Ezra's name pop up. Welcome, Ezra.
Good morning.
Okay, that takes us to item 4A, review and adoption of 2021 operating capital projects and debt service budgets. Michael?
Thank you, President Hubble. This action today is to approve the 2021 budget, capital improvements plan, or capital projects and debt service budgets, 3 budgets. The schedules are in your commission packet and the documents for approval. And as you know, we've gone through a process of public hearings and notices to the public for the budget. We have not received any comments since 2 weeks ago when I reported that I didn't receive any new comments. So I just want to turn it over to you, and then the next step after the commission approves the budget will be for Jeff to go through a presentation on service charges and how that budget will be, how those costs will be allocated to our owner communities. So I'll turn it back over to you, President Hovell, and see if there's any commission questions.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Does anybody have any questions about the budget? We've had a few kicks at the can, so to speak. Okay, I don't hear anybody or see anything. Do we have a motion to approve the 2021 operating capital projects and debt service budgets?
This is Commissioner Eskridge. I move the adoption of the budget.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Eskridge to adopt the budget, which would also include, I don't see the resolution number listed unless I open up so it would include the approval of the resolution. Do we have a second?
Wilson will second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Eskridge, seconded by Commissioner Wilson. Do we have any comments or questions or any observations? Okay, seeing none. We can do this as a roll call. We don't need a roll call in the budget, do we? Or do we?
Let's do a roll call vote and just be
Okay. Yeah.
safe about it.
Okay, so Janelle, would you like to do the roll call vote, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Bookland,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark. Excuse me, he's absent today.
He's absent.
Commissioner Eskridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Foster,
Aye.
Commissioner Hobble,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Swanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Off. Okay, thank you. The motion carries. That takes us to item 4B, review and adoption of the 2021 service charge rates. Jeff, you were going to lead this off.
As Jeff queues up and leads off, I just wanted to share a little bit of a milestone. This will be Jeff's last service charges presentation, as he is retiring at the end of this year. So we'll have to absorb his knowledge today and the insight he brings to this service charges discussion. So I just wanted to say that. Jeff didn't know I was going to say that, but I wanted to say that.
Well, congratulations, Jeff, on your retirement.
Thank you. Is everyone hearing me, and are you seeing my screen?
Yes, I can see the screen and I hear you.
All right, thank you. So I'll just mention that this parts of this presentation are geared for newer commissioners and members of the public who may not have been through this before. So for those commissioners been around a while, Commissioner Hubble and Commissioner Meyer, you have seen almost all this general material before, but we like to go through it because there seems to be always someone new who benefits from seeing this again, or seeing this maybe for the first time. So with that, we'll just start out what we're actually trying to do here. You just passed a budget, and part of the challenge of a budget is getting the revenue you need to fund that budget. And this is the technical part of doing that, which is how do you set your rates? And a rate is basically a budgeted service charge, $1, divided by some kind of chargeable unit, which we tend to call a load. So it's a gallon, a pound of total suspended solids, a pound of something that we come with. The idea is at this point, when we're trying to establish the rate, we want to pick a rate or determine rates that have the best chance of getting our actual loads times our rate, equaling our required revenue next year. So the whole challenge is try to match, get the desired revenue. Another way to look at this might be to say that our goal is to collect the budgeted revenue. There's a method to it. We have to distribute the cost to billing parameters. Billing parameters are intended to be what are the elements in our rate structure that are causing costs at the districts, and we'll go through what those are. And we have to estimate those billable units. Those are flows and loadings in other terms. So when you have those two things, you can determine rates and you can give out estimated charges for communities. We as a district don't need the estimated charges for communities next year, but our customer communities appreciate getting that information. All we really need to set a rate is what do we think is going to happen for the district as a whole. Because there's no consideration really of where they're coming from. A pound is a pound, a gallon is a gallon, no matter the source. So what you're seeing here is that rather than having one rate, which we kind of talk about like we have one rate, but actually we have 7 rates for 7 different billing parameters. These should be familiar to you because they come up every quarter when Todd goes through his billing things. So the first 5, the top here, are all wastewater related characteristics. The second 2 are customer related characteristics. And to help clarify what those 2 customer related characteristics are, I'll mention that an equivalent meter is literally, well, let's start with actual customer. It's a little easier. An actual customer is how many water meters serve a property. I'm a household owner, resident. I have 1 water meter. I am 1. In the old days, we used to say if Oscar Myers is served by 1 big water meter, a 12-inch pipe coming into their property, they are 1. There's no differentiation in size here. for actual customer. When you get to equivalent meters, there is a differentiation in size. If I'm a typical household, I have a small meter, and that's I'm an equivalent meter count of 1. If I'm Oscar Mayer, and say if they had a large water meter, a large water pipe coming to their property, they might have a 12-inch line and a 12-inch meter. They would have an equivalent meter count of 160. So there in that one, in that parameter, the size of establishment does matter. Does not for actual customers, and that'll come up again later later in this presentation. So now to give a little overview before we get into details of this year, this should be familiar to you. This revenue presentation. This is what Todd just showed you last week or last meeting. You see that. Excuse me. I'm one out of sequence. This is last year at this time. This is 2019, and the situations have changed from year to year. Last year at this time, sorry, hit a wrong button. Last year at this time, we were looking at really up in the right-hand corner. You see, we were projecting this time we were going to be under budget by $77,000, which is practically right on budget. When you look at how we actually finished the year, we actually answered within 1/10 of a percentage point to being exactly on budget. So if you see here is what's maybe, sorry. What you see here, if you look at the volume, we're under on some. The red is the things we're under budget on. In other words, less loads are coming in for that billable parameter than we had budgeted for. The other ones, the green, and we're over. And if you look at last year, we had $200,000 up in total suspended solids and about $200,000 down in volume. They actually balance each other pretty well. And that's typically what happens. One of the benefits of having multiple rate parameters is being often a little bit in one, oftentimes offsets a little bit of the law of averaging here. It helps you meet your total. So anyway, this is what it looked like last year. So some green, some go on, and we estimated really close to projected revenue. The picture this year is different, as the commission knows. This is the slide or the information you saw 2 weeks ago. This is for 2020. It showed that we are behind on almost every single wastewater related parameter. Again, we attribute that largely to COVID, except maybe for volume, you'd say it's more weather related. Some undoubtedly due to COVID as well. So this is unusual. I don't know that I've ever seen a year where we've been below on every single wastewater related parameter. There are 2 that are fine. The equivalent meters and the actual customer counts, those are good, but they are pretty much on budget, so they don't have a big thing. So we are projecting, this one says the actual shortfall through 3/4 was 1.3 million. We're actually projecting total shortfall of close to 2 million. That's been in the budget. That is already in the 2021 budget you just adopted. It acknowledges those facts and those projections. One of the things is, how does this look like over the years? I always like to show this because our system is not set up to be right on point every year. If you look at this series, this graph, you see, I think it's a series of 11 years. Basically covers Michael's tenure here at the district plus 1 year, 2010. He didn't really have anything to do with setting that or controlling that. But if you look at that, you've got 11 years, and I believe you have 5 years where we are under budget. And you see, I took the liberty of projecting where we will be this year. I'm projecting we're going to be down 5% almost, 4.7% down. So if you just look at last year, just about right spot on. Unusual, but if you look at that, so we bounce around the mean. We're trying to get 100%. Sometimes we miss low, sometimes we miss high. That's it. If I looked at a 5-year rolling average of that as of now, since 2012, going back for any 5-year period, if you average out the total amount of revenue the district got for any 5-year period, starting in 2012 and going back to 27. So the first period from I should say from 2011, going back from 2011 to 2007 or 08, whatever is 5 years, I think you get, and look at the total revenue we asked for and the total revenue connected. Any 5-year period in 2012, with that looking back 5 years and including 2012, we were under budget by 0.9% in total. which is not very far off. The highest we were over we're off underneath. The highest we ever got over recommended budget for that 5-year period, recommend or desired revenues, was 1.9% in 2017. Currently, at the end of 2020, I'm projecting that for the last current 5 years, the district would be up 0.7%. So considerably, still up for the last 5 years, but not very much, because if you can see the previous 4 years of that period, we were over or on budget every time. This one big year is having a significant effect. And that's usually what happens if the history says that we're not going to be right every year. So that's its background. The last background slide I'd like to show is, again, just saying, how does the district charges and our customer community charges stack up to some metric? The metric we use is the national average provided by NACWA. The blue line here is the city of Madison rates. We have to use the city of Madison rates rather than our rates because the customer pays both our rates and the local community's rates. So that's a better metric for here. So you see in 2020, the city's estimated typical charge for a household is $362, and nationally it's estimated to be $532. And if you look at the trend of these lines, we're basically mirroring the national trends, though if you look at percentages, we're actually gaining a little bit. We're at back in 2013 and 14, we're more like 61% of the national average. Right now, we're about 68. But we have a long way to go before we ever would make up that whole difference between the average. So I'm going to say that's at the high. There's many communities much higher than that national average. Just like there are some communities like us who are lower than the national average. Okay, that's it for that. And then I'll just say for right now to transition into the big picture for this year, and then I'll take a pause. Right now, the whole thing is you just approved the operating budget. That sets the required service charges for this year. The operating expenditure increase is 2.8%. Because the budget as amended in January, including the $775,000 for the budget use of reserves in 2020, the required service charge increase is larger than the expenditure increase, and that's why you get the 5.2%. That's the main driver. So at a minimum, our revenues have to go up by 5.2% to balance our budget. And I guess at this point, I will take a pause and see if there are any questions from commissioners to this point in any of the general material I've provided.
Okay, does anybody have any questions so far? Okay, I don't see any hands that or hear anything, so you can continue on, Jeff.
Thank you, Commissioner Hubble. So now we'll go back to our overview. We'll go dig a little deeper, and as Michael has told me more than once, this material can get a little dense. So I'll have a little bit of history in the middle of this to try to introduce a little color, I guess. So we'll have to go a little bit on the top side, or the numerator of our equation is what's our budgeted dollars, what do we have to collect, and then what are our estimated loads. So we'll go with this one by one. And first say a couple more things. So this is the big drivers. If you look at what happens in any year, the cost side comes from the budget, 5.2% increase, $2.2 million. We're also have seen in 2020, expect to see in 2021, decreased flows and loadings. And again, as in most years, when you look at variations in between the parameter rate increases, it will be related to our capital improvements program. And I'll say more about that later, why that is. So I'm going to start this year with the overview of the cost distribution. If you see in the bottom here, the bottom line, you see the total amount of budget, which includes both revenues from service charges for communities and from our septage haulers, because they're included in this rate calculation. And it adds up to that 5.2% we've been talking about. That's the total. We're averaging, trying to get $2.2 million. The effect across the different parameters are not uniform. And I guess there's a tendency to think they should be, but they ought not to be in general. The reason to have multiple parameters is that the effects are not uniform. If they were uniform, you probably don't need multiple parameters for one reason. You still would like it for other reasons. But so let's go into that a little bit. One thing, so if you look at that, this is normal for many years. There's some, oftentimes at this point of the year, I'm talking about, well, it looks what the odd balls or the most variable components seem to be volume and customers. They are always seem to be the ones that either high or low or something like that. And that we'll go into the reason. And that is, again, coming from, as we said before, the debt service side of our equation. In attachment 2, you see the full picture. That our total cost distribution includes both what we call the user charge side, which is our operating expenses, and our debt service side, which, just to be clear, includes not just debt, but also the $1.5 million we're transferring directly to capital projects fund. That is in this $18 million figure you see here. So that as a package, that sum has to go up by 7.7% in 2021. We need to collect that much more money from that part of the operation. And again, you see volume and actual customers lead the differences. They're the outliers in percentage increases. And first, I want to take care of this 35.4% increase for equivalent meters. That sounds huge, but it's almost inconsequential. Not inconsequential, but it's not nearly as big as it, because the base it is coming off of is very small. Very little of our equivalent meter charges come from debt. Most of it comes from our operating side. So this is a very small piece of the overall equivalent meter picture. So it drops out. It doesn't have a material effect on why one rate would go up or down much more than another. But this does. I mean, these do, because they include bigger numbers. You're talking $4 million and $6 million bases, and you're going up by 10 and 2%. That's a little bit different. Some of this, and while I'm on this slide, I'd like to say, why does this actual customer parameter this year not go up much? Let's start with volume first, because that's where my notes go. Volume goes up a little bit more because, as normal, we are adding new projects into our portfolio of loans. This year, the projects that add that dollars are the West Interceptor Relief, the Sherwood Hills Phase 1, and the Pump Station 13 and 14 rehab projects, which hit our rates for the first time in a big way this year. And that's why it's driving. And as you know, collection system projects are primarily dealing with volume. They also have a small suspended solids component, but they deal primarily with volume. So that's why you would expect and should see a jump on the volume side for debt service, because we're adding most of the dollars there would be allocated to volume. On the other side, when you look at actual customers, what is different this year, just the way it plays out, is that yes, there was an increase for the Pump Station 13 and 14. Actual customers thing that has to do with excess capacity, the allocation. We'll go through that a little bit more detail later. But it was partially offset by decreases for other projects, including the West Interceptor Sherwood Relief. Those actual customer projections went down. So that's the sum, or that's the reason. There's a reason why they move. And now I'd like to take a little bit of a history lesson, just to say, because this applies to the question, why every year does this actual parameter, actual customer parameter and excess capacity come into play at this time of rate setting. So you're looking at a screen that talks about a issue with the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin and the district. In the early 1970s, the district rate structure was simple, very simple. It was actually too simple. It billed only based on volume. So Oscar Mayer, being a high volume water user, claimed a variety of reasons that our rate structure was unreasonable and unjustly discriminatory, and they took their complaint to the Public Service Commission. Over several years, the district was changing its rate structure, and at the same time, Oscar Mayer pursued a complaint to the Public Service Commission, which then as now has jurisdictions over complaints about our rates, structure, and practices. So what I'm showing here is the first page of the 1977 Public Service Commission findings of fact and order from that case. That's not what we're here for. I want to pick out just a piece of this to talk about in the next slide. So, but at this time, the foundation of the present rate structure was established. The rate structure went from volume only to volume, BOD, suspended solids, and customer parameters. Since that time, I should say that the BOD and suspended solids were in there. Were in the cost causing components, billing parameters, because they were in the district's permit. We have limitations on what we can discharge on those parameters. In the early 80s, when ammonia was added to the district's permit, then nitrogen was added as a billing parameter. Nitrogen as a precursor to ammonia or a substitute. In the mid 90s, when a phosphorus limit was added to the district discharge permit, phosphorus was added as a billing parameter. So that's essentially what you have today in our system. The next slide brings up to the exact point I wanted to bring up today, the bigger point. This action by the Public Commission and the ongoing conversation with our big industrial contributor at the time and the city of Madison was that these key points, these are points 2, 3, and 4 in the order of the 1977. And it says the first highlight in blue is that we should allocate debt service costs to either present capacity or excess capacity. And down below in the next thing, it says you're supposed to do this comparing excess capacity, the difference between the design capacity and used capacity in the current year. So I generally use the term, and our rate structure uses the term used capacity rather than present capacity because they kind of use both words. And then it tells us that the cost of excess capacity is collected on a customer basis, and they meant the actual customer basis. And that's what is done to this day. So it doesn't mean it can't change. It just helped explain what the thinking was back then and why we are where we're at now. So that's a bit of history. So then I'll go back to how this plays out for the district in most years. This is a slide that I used last year, and I just want to highlight 3 points off of it. A lot of the things you just saw in that text from the Public Service Commission is what you see reflected here. Now, I want to point out that this is not the complete role of cost allocation for different projects, because the liquid processing improvements phase 1 has components that are not volume related. So they don't add up to the numbers in column. The debt service column do not add up. This is only talking about volume and actual customer costs. So one thing I want to point out, why do you see variations in our overall rates caused by debt service every year? Simple fact is, one, debt service costs can be lumpy. In 2019, we had in a rate $600 and some thousand for the debt service costs for these 2 projects. In 2020, it went up by 1 million, almost 1.1 million. That's a lumpy number. That's 1.1 million out of our total, say 40. That's a big number. So it's going to have a lumpy effect. And the PSC Commission said you have to do this on a yearly basis. And this is one reason why. We add a lot of stuff annually, more so now than in the past. Then the second thing is that the percent access capacity determination changes through the life of a project. This 2 years here happens to do with differences in design. The first year these things show up in our rate structure, we don't always know exactly what the design is going to be, how much is excess capacity, how much is not going to be. So these are guesses, Jeff's guesses. I guessed 100% and 25% for these 2 projects respectively. They actually turned out, when the design reports were done and you can look at it better, look at cost estimates, it's 66% and 16.5% changes. So that's the second thing that changes. The percent capacity changes every year. As a project actually goes into service, then the actual flows, the actual peak flows experienced in that project affect this excess capacity number per the PSC order. Those, any excess capacity costs you do have go right to the actual customer cost before they get split to anything else. So that's why you see swings in that parameter in most years. And then for collection system projects, and even most planned projects where there is a volume component, the rest of it, the bulk of the rest of the charges for a debt service go to volume, where you would expect it to be. But the first cut is, what is excess capacity? So because of those things, it's a lumpy nature. It hits hard in a given year, and then that's why you see it. It's noticeable in our rates. I would say that over time, this function will be a little bit mitigated because as our debt portfolio continues to grow, the effect of one project is less. So over time, it should get less. Is getting less. So at that point, that's all I wanted to do for this, to go give a little background. And I just pause again for President Hubble if there's any questions from the commission.
Okay, does any commissioner have a question?
It looks like Grant has his, Mr.
I'm
Foster.
trying to scroll down here. It's not.
Commissioner Foster has his hand up.
Okay, I was just trying to scroll down on my participants and I wasn't. Okay, Grant, go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks for the presentation, Jeff. I think I have a better understanding of how the excess capacity charges are distributed across customers rather than sort of tied with utilization. My question is related to connection charge, and I was not on the commission when sort of that was revisited and updated, but it seems that at least part of that excess capacity eventually is sort of realized by new customers being able to come online. And so my question is, do we have any analysis, or have we ever done any analysis of the degree to which those sort of new connection charges, do they fully recoup the cost that is distributed for the excess capacity? They kind of make up for that, and does the mechanism for those connection charge revenue, does that sort of proportionately reimburse at a customer level versus a kind of volume level? And I apologize if I'm not being super clear here, but if the excess capacity costs are supposed to be borne kind of equally across customers rather than by heavy users, does the collection of new connection charges that, again, is sort of tapping into that excess capacity, is that being sort of reimbursed back at a customer basis versus a sort of capacity or volume basis?
Okay, I think there's at least two questions there and maybe more. But the one question was, this excess capacity question, is it related to our connection charges? Indirectly, yes, for exactly the reason you're saying. When you have a debt service in a given year, only current customers can pay it because that's all you have to collect from. So the way the district has looked at that, and looked at it pretty hard in the 2017 review of connection charges, they decided that they were too low and they were both increased. So, but the difference, so that's it. So yes, there was a analysis done at that time, and the determination was it was much lower. We weren't recouping enough. So that's why the 2017, that's why we're still ramping up rates over multiple years from the treatment plant side. The treatment plant connection charge was changed radically to bring in more money to help cover that. The second part of your question is, how is that money we get allocated to in the rate structure? Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, that is a little more indirect because the way the money is, primarily because of tracking issues, any monies from connection charges goes into our projects fund and can be used for whatever projects the budget says it should be, whatever we want to do for pay-as-you-go construction. It's not directly against any parameter. The way customers see relief is that because those projects were paid with cash from connection charges, they do not appear on their bill at all. That's the difference. So there's not a direct offset directly into this. It just doesn't show because it reduces our debt service load. Whatever we do with pay-go takes off debt service. So by that way, it comes off bills, but there's not a direct credit to the actual customer parameter.
So,
Go
ahead, Michael.
And just adding to what Jeff is saying, and our recovery period is long-term on those connection charges, we may not realize a revenue or a connection for 20 years or more. So while we may be investing in the capital now as part of a budget next year, recovering of those resources takes a long period of time.
Yeah, and I mean, it's obviously a really complicated kind of accounting question, but I guess, and I probably don't fully understand it yet, but based on today's presentation, it seems to me that we are required to kind of allocate that upfront cost of additional capacity at a customer basis to ensure that heavy users aren't really paying at all, or just a proportionate at a customer level and not related to their utilization. But then the recovery of that money in the form of connection charges, which again, yeah, happens over a long period of time and sort of indirect, seems like the benefit of recouping that is more shared across the whole system and not actually sort of, I mean, in a way, the actual customers are, paying for this up front, but it seems like the payback is not also allocated back at a customer basis, but rather across the board. So it seems to me with that understanding that kind of heavy users are in some ways getting subsidized in this regard, because overall, if rates across the board, if we're carving out this excess capacity and it's not getting paid for equally between meter level, customer level and actual flows, customers are bearing the weight of that initial investment, but we're not, they're not the ones that are sort of getting reimbursed via the connection charge model. So, again, maybe I'm just not really fully understanding it, but if that is the case, it might be something to look at down the road to see if there were a way to better segregate that reimbursement in a way, or to get that credit back to the side of the equation that is actually being burdened with the capital cost on the front end. Thanks.
Fair enough. Hearing no further questions, I don't think I can. I think your comments are appropriate, Commissioner Foster. Yes, in the long run, a lot of things can change. So this is where we're at now. So is there any further, not hearing if there are any further questions, I will move on. I don't see any other hands.
I don't see any additional hands. Okay, so no additional questions. Can you go back to your original screen with the, I think we're up for any comments or questions before we get a motion?
I'm not quite ready for that, Commissioner Hubble. I'd like to show you a review of the loads, unless you don't want to see it this year.
Oh, okay. I thought you were completed. Okay, go ahead.
Usually people enjoy this because I get positive comments about it. They like, a picture is worth 1,000 words here. And I guess what I'd like to point out, I got to move something on my screen. This is right over a key part. What you're looking at here is a graphical depiction of the quarter by quarter charges we make for, quarter by quarter charges we make. It's the sum of the bills we send to our customer communities. 9 Springs is the sum. And I'd like to point out that there's a little key down here, this solid magenta line, that is our budgeted number. The dotted line with the squares on it, light blue line, that is the actual billed amount. So what you're looking at here, if you want to look at it this way, I look at it is anytime the actuals are well above the budgeted, we are getting a budget surplus from that. We are collecting a budget surplus from that parameter. When it flips around, we are getting a deficit. We're running a budget deficit on that parameter. So for example, if you look at 2019 right here, the straight line here is 2019, all 4 quarters. We're pretty well on with volume, not too far off in general, because we intersect this pretty much in the middle. The area here is a little bigger than the area there, but not bad. Contrast that to 2018. We're way over. We're over collecting on volume. We run a positive surplus there. Sorry, got to be careful what I hit. And then when you get to 2020, the year we're at now, we are below. So there we're running a deficit. So what we're projecting is coming down from the high volumes experienced in 2018 and 19. We're still slowly going down with lake levels and groundwater moisture and precipitation. We're projecting a decrease in the volume, which should not surprise anyone. For CBOD, here you're seeing something we saw in quite a few places. I'm going to call this the COVID effect. These are the last 3 quarters. This is 2020. 2020, first quarter was pretty much right on budget. 22nd and third quarter, well below. For our rate setting, we've determined we're using the last 2 quarters, saying the COVID effect is going to endure into 2021. So we're going with that, the lower number. You will see that in a number. There's sometimes abrupt changes in here, and we're attributing that to COVID and economic activity due to that, less of it. Same general picture with suspended solids. Big gap here. Even before, this one is a little different. Even before in Q1, before COVID effects hit, we were well below anything in prior years. Well, we had to go back a few years to get that low. So again, projecting a decrease in loads. When you get to nitrogen, this is one where if you look carefully, we have been over budgeting, estimating too high on our volume, on the quantities we're getting, our billable chargeable units for close to 3 years now. And it's continuing to go down, maybe because of COVID, but it also, in this case, it was exhibited before COVID. That one also goes down. Phosphorus. Again, here's what we build. The budgeted line has been above every year. So that estimate goes down to match the experience we're seeing. Equivalent meters is one of those based just on basically construction. And despite COVID this year, we've had a good number of actual customers and equivalent meters added. So this is continuing going up. Actually, pretty generous up for this parameter. And this one, actual customers as well, going up. There doesn't seem to be a slowdown in most commercial and residential activity, house building. So overall, what does that give you? It gives you a group of wastewater related parameters that all show significant decreases in estimated loadings or billable units. And for these two, the actual customers, they are continuing to increase, so they show a positive trend. As you know, lower volumes by them, or lower loads by themselves require rates to go up to get the required amount of revenue. So if you look at the effect of that, the 5.2% revenues must go up, combined with the generally across the board lower wastewater characteristics we expect to receive billable units. You will see these first 5 parameters all have pretty substantial increases, and here are the actual increases. This is what the rates would need to be to balance our budget, while the equivalent meter and actual customer parameters show much smaller changes for the reasons that their loads are going up. So they get the benefit of that. Okay. There's also this hypothetical average residential customer charge that I calculate every year. We don't actually charge residential customers directly, remember, because we send our charges to customer meters, they add their local costs, and that's the bill the customer sees. However, if we did, this is what it would approximately look like for this year. It goes up 10%. About $20, well, to a value just under $20 per month. So it's an average, the increase is like, I think, $21.21. If we were billing directly to a household in a year. That's, we don't, as you know, we don't directly bill, but if we did, so this is kind of a little bit hypothetical to try to say what this might mean to an end user. Related to our other rates are our septage rates. And septage rates depend on the concentrations of different pollutants in each kind of waste and the underlying rates for BUD, suspended solids, and the other pollutant parameters. Here you see across the board significant increases. And that's as expected because all the pollutant parameters have significant rate increases. These you'd expect them also to go up significantly, and they do. And just as a side comment here, when you're talking about septage, if septage as a whole, all these listed here, were considered as one customer, the amount of loads we get from these customers now would approximate what we get from either of these three villages, McFarland, Cottage Grove, or Windsor. They are roughly the same within the $900,000 a year mark. It's getting significant. This has jumped up quite a bit in the last 5 years. So it's getting to be a little more noticeable effect on our revenue streams.
Jeff, it might be helpful just to clarify sometimes, and I make that you correct me all the time too, is when you say rates, what you mean by rates, because rates is not necessarily service charges, what people will pay, but it's a rate used to calculate the service charge, or etc.
Right.
So just clarify that just quickly.
Yeah. In common usage, we often say the word rates when we mean service charges. So what are we going to charge you? When we're talking in this context, rates is something specific. It is a dollar per unit of billable something you're giving us. So in this case, these are the rates we charge per 1,000 gallons. It's not per parameter because this is an aggregated rate. So that's what it is. You see that. I'll bring it up again when we get to the customer community stuff, that there's a difference between a rate and a charge. Everybody at the district coming to the district pays the same rate, which is the same dollar per gallon or the same dollar per actual customer or the same dollar per pound of pollutant. That doesn't change. What changes from community to community is their share of the load or septic share of the load, and they may pay more or less of that, but the actual dollars per what you give us is the same. It's one of the features of the district system, and which is why it's considered fair.
Jeff, before you go on, you mentioned that I didn't quite catch what you said about, are those loadings or the amount of value received about equal to Cottage Grove, McFarland, and Windsor, or what was?
That is, if you look on your you can piece it together from information you have, I think, in attachment 1 and attachment 2. There's about $890,000, $880,000 estimated charges for septage in this budget. That would put it up there with those villages I mentioned. Those estimated charges.
Right. Okay, the estimated charges. So that's rather significant that it's equal to that.
Yes.
And is the reason is one of the reasons because fewer people are land spreading, or it's because you're getting more grease trap, settling basin, and portable toilet waste?
I don't know enough to say, dude. Well, the biggest increase was in septic tank waste. So I think you're seeing that they're probably getting, maybe there's more houses in the country not on sewer that need to come us, but whatever reason, we are seeing increased volumes of these wastes. So it's becoming bigger, and since they are, most of these wastes are very potent, they're very concentrated. So by volume, they're not very high, but by loadings, they're significant. They pay that. So what you notice here in our rate structure, because of this, they pay for our collection system. Every collection system cost they pay, even though they use none of it. That was one of the trade-offs the district did when they first established that rate. So
right. Well, this kind of gets back to the later discussion item too. Most of those septic tank wastes are not district customers. They come from outside district. So we're accepting, which we have to accept, the septic tank waste. Okay.
Right. And yeah, DNR, it's a public policy on the state to encourage septic waste to come to wastewater treatment plants rather than being land spread. They do things like, if you build facilities to handle septic waste, they give you 0 interest loans on that because they're trying to encourage wastewater treatment plants.
Yeah, I understand.
To do that. Okay. Yep. So review of customer loadings and charges, because this is always the same. Now remember that this is looking at individual communities. City of Madison mirrors what we're seeing at district as a whole. Volume going down. We've been over on them the last 2 years for our estimates. We're trying to get it more in line and continue with the long-term trend of the lake levels coming down and precipitation coming down. We expect volume to come down. CBOD, again, you're seeing here the same second quarter and third quarter drops that we think are going to continue. So their number goes down. Suspended solids the same, down from their previous highs. Phosphorus down as well. We over collected for multiple years. Time to catch up. Now my screen is showing, I can't actually read that one, the top of the screen. I'm gonna have to go to my backup because
Jeff, we actually under collected for Madison, right? I mean, that was, our budget was higher than what actuals were.
if our budget is higher and actuals come in here, we under collect. We are not.
Right. That's what I'm clarifying.
Yeah, we under collect. So if our budget number is too high, we budget too much. Like a budget is a prediction. It's not actual. As you know, we always charge based on what you actually give us. So this is one reason you have the budget shortfall this year, is because we thought we'd be up here and we set rates because they're for up there and it came in down here. You will under collect. Yes, thank you, Michael. Okay, this is City of Madison Foster. Again, we under collected against budget. This is one where it's the other way around. City of Monona, highly influenced by lake levels. You see, starting here in 2018, we're not too bad off here. We're a little low here. Then they started skyrocketing with the wet weather. We've always been low. Even this year, the budget number was low, meaning they paid more than we estimated they would pay for this parameter. But we're still saying, expecting slightly decreased precipitation and coming down from the highs of the last couple of years, that they will see a decrease in volume. And you will see this reflected in how much of their overall estimated service charge increase is not as large as some other communities because this load we project to go down. City of Middleton goes contrary, or at least mostly contrary to what we've seen. There's this unexplained blip in 19 and 20. We never had a good explanation where their suspended solids went counter to the overall district trends. But our billing folks don't believe it's going to stay that high because the last one is down here, maybe more of a long-term average. So we're moderate increase for them for this year. But that's counter to the overall trend where we said suspended solids are going down as a whole. And then this is just a scattering of things. There's interesting things going on in the district in our rate structure. For some reason, Cottage Grove, CBOD, is going up. And we believe the spike you're seeing here is due to one customer, significant customer in Cottage Grove. And they are looking into it. They're doing additional sampling to try to make sure that they're charging them properly or what's happening. But we're in contact with them on that one. But because of that increase in load, we're reflecting that they go up, even though everybody else as a whole is going down. Village of DeForest, same thing. This is a community that has a significant industrial load for CBOD from the Sanimax facility. And that has not been affected by the pandemic. They've been going standard production. So they ramped up. Sanimax was lower here. They've ramped up. And that's why you're seeing there. We expect them to continue as normal. So they do not see a decrease. They also counter the trend. And then maybe the most, salient example of what one industry can do. This is, I believe, UAB Labs in Windsor. That is, their household loadings are somewhere down in the 700s pounds per day. And look what happened. Look at the scale here. This is going from 700 a few years ago to over 3,000 pounds. That is a significant percent of the total loads of CBOD to the district. And we can handle it, but we've been underestimating what their budget it would be. So this year we're saying they take more. Again, they actually pay what they give us. So we actually got a surplus based on budget from Windsor, the Village of Windsor. And then this is a really small, one of the smaller districts, just showing what happens for them. This is a district, Town of Dunn #1, that has a lot of II. So when the storms hit in 2018, their flows peak really high. We happen to get it about right for 2019, but in 2020, they've dropped even more. So we're going down with our estimate for their volume. Town of Dunn, Volume 4 is just a larger district that for some reason, or not a larger, it's one of the small districts, but is showing not particularly susceptible to II, but it's showing some natural variation we see from time to time in these smaller districts. They've been averaging higher for the last year and a half. We haven't seen them really change, so they're going up. So we give you those as examples of why individual communities' share of district loads changes, because their percent increases. This is percent increases, not in rates, because everybody pays the same rates. This is their projected increases of their share of district costs. So Monona, because their volume is coming down, we were under last year. We had a big increase relative to everything else for their estimated charges. This year, not so much. They're under the average because their volume we project to come down. That's a big component of their bill. Madison, you saw consistent lower loads from Madison. That is reflected in their small estimated service charge increase for 2021. Fitchburg, pretty steady, not 9.9 last year, 8% this year. Middleton, 9 to 11. DeForest has been one of these communities that's been going up higher for many years because of their industries and their growth as a community. They still continue with a high increase. And Windsor, because of the effect of that one industry, continues to see a very high increase. That all happens within the overall average from 2020 to 2019, going up 9.7%, and this year only 5.2% in charges. So with that, I'll take a final stop for questions before the commission would hopefully consider the resolution.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Does anybody have any questions? Ezra?
Yeah.
Do you have a question?
I couldn't find the virtual hand raising, so I thought I'd raise my actual hand. Thank you, Jeff. Great presentation. I always appreciate it, and you know, it's I don't know whether it's dense or not, but I enjoy it. It's good stuff, and it's important for us to go over. I really got a lot out of it. But I wanted to ask quick. I mean, on that last part where you show us those comparisons over the time series of each community by parameter. So I want to clarify: are you folks actually working those estimates of predicted flows next year by parameter, by community, to build this whole set of rates for the coming year? Is that actually part and parcel to how you do this process?
That is exactly how we do that process. We sit down and go for volume. We go through every district community and every building. We look at these exact charts and we say, Todd and I do it. Jen Hurlbus has helped work it last year. We sit down and say, what do we think is going to happen to each community? Then we compare it at the end with what we call something 9-ping check. What have we been seeing across all, and the numbers better agree pretty well, and usually they do. But we build it from the bottom up. We don't say we think it's going to go to whatever. We acknowledge that, hey, we're seeing big drops, so you're going to have to see some drops in communities, but you almost always see it. And if you call it as you see it on those graphs, you come up with pretty reasonable numbers, as reasonable as you can.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched it over all these years, and it really is. I gather there's art and science to it, but it, we come out really remarkably accurate against the backdrop of factors we can't, the factors that are really hard to predict, weather and other things. And so yeah, it's impressive. I always get a kick out of this. I think we do a really great job as a district on it. Thanks, Jeff, both for today, but for all the long years of doing this stuff. You've been great, and it's been great having you doing this part of the process for all these years. Thanks much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? I don't see or hear anybody. So do we have a motion to, let's see, I can't remember, there one or two I think this is R4, if I'm correct. So it's to approve the service charge rates and septage disposal rates. That's a resolution 2020-1029 R4.
I'm happy to move adoption of that resolution. It's Commissioner Meyer again.
Okay, we have Commissioner Meyer motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Swanson, 1 second.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Swanson to approve the sewer service charge rates and septic disposal rates, which also includes approval of 2020-1029 R4. Do we have any other comments, questions, or anything for the vote? Okay, I don't think I see anybody. Okay, why don't we do a roll call again on the rates? Janelle, please.
Excuse me, one moment. You caught me off guard there. So I need just to grab my roll call sheet. Okay. Commissioner Bookland,
Aye.
Commissioner Eskridge,
Aye.
Commissioner Foster,
Aye.
Commissioner Havel,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy,
Aye.
Commissioner Swanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much, Jeff, for the detailed presentation, and good luck in your retirement. Let's see. That takes us to Kurt Sauser, review and adoption of 2021 connection charge rates and plan review, direct connection and annexation fees. And I believe there's 2 resolutions here, 5 and 6, related to this item. Kurt, you want to go ahead?
Yes, you are correct. Resolutions 5 and 6. So let me see if I can get how to get this screen shared here. Bear with me for a minute. There we go. Is that visible now?
Yes, it is, Kurt.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Great. So yes, Kurt Sauser, engineering technician, and I am here to present two resolutions for approval. And the first one is regarding 21 connection charge rates, and the second is 2021 plan review, direct connection, and annexation fees. So connection charge rates are what they are related to sewer extensions that are approved almost always on the consent calendar, and these are rates that are administered on an area basis. So new developments pay based on the parcel area that is being served. So the first component of connection charge rates is conveyance facility connection charges. And this is the pipes and pumps that convey the wastewater back to the treatment plant. There are 32 separate conveyance facility basins that we maintain, and these are adjusted annually by the ENR construction cost index. And that index pretty closely follows inflation. And we usually, inflation's been about 3% annually, and the ENR index has pretty much mirrored that. And the increase for 2021 is 1.3%, which is down a little bit from our average. So this is a map of our conveyance facility basins, and as Commissioner Foster had questions on the last topic, I think this there's basin number 23 here, which is very large. This is called our Wanakee to Forest extension basin. And that infrastructure was originally installed around 1970. And so it's about 50 years old. And so yeah, when that infrastructure was put in place, it had to be sized to accommodate both Wanakee and DeForest and Dane. And so those customers are using that infrastructure. And if and when Wanakee gets large enough that they need extra capacity, we will build facilities, and they then will have a separate basin rate for that particular area. The second component of connection charges is the treatment plant connection charge. And this represents the value of the treatment plant as a whole. There's only one rate, and for 2021, it's year 3 of an 8-year phase-in. And the average increase is about $193 from what we were charging in 2020. So this is a graph showing the treatment plant connection charge rate. So we are predicting what the value of the treatment plant will be in 2026, and we have plotted this line, and the budget that was just approved. This is the allocation that for the rate on that line to get us to where we need to be in 2026. So as I mentioned, year 3 of the 8-year phase-in. So the conveyance facility connection charges plus the treatment plant connection charge equals the combined connection charge rate. And these are the rates that we are asking for approval for on the first resolution. And the second resolution is for 2021 review fees. And the fee structure was established in 2015 after thoroughly reviewing the costs. And we reviewed these costs for 2021 and are not recommending any review. So the fees we were recommending for 2021 would be just the current rates that we were charging in 2020. So with that, are there any questions?
Okay, does anybody have any questions? I'm going to expand my screen here. Okay, I had a couple, Kurt. In regard to the review fees, that last screen you had up with the 33.75.
Yes.
Yep. So what of that fee, how much is personnel?
So I would say almost all of it is personnel. The annexation per petitioned area is that is more expensive. There is additional legal review involved usually, and there's newspaper publication with that petitioned annexation. So as you know, that one. Yeah, it requires a public hearing, so that's why it's more expensive.
Most of the fees, it's personnel costs. So
exactly.
That raises a question in my mind. Have we been getting fees that people basically paid more for than the service they got? Because obviously we're going to have a personnel increase with wages and benefits that was built into the budget. So I'm trying to figure out if that was the case, or why aren't you then accounting for personnel and other cost increases into the fees to give at least some type of increase to cover that?
So it's been adjusted every year from 2015 through 2020 based on average salary and benefit increases. So we took that number and just applied it. For this year's rate, I went back and looked at all of the numbers that went into that, and it did not the salary and benefits did not dictate an increase for the 2021 rates.
So what you're basically saying is that in 2020, the amount of time that we put in was not the amount of time that was charged.
This is Bill Walker. Could I jump in here a moment on this question?
Go ahead.
So there are two, it's a good question. This is Bill Walker, Strategy Department Director. There are two other factors here that go into this. One, we tend to round the numbers because we don't want to do like little microscopic adjustments year after year.
Mhm.
And so we can be content with a similar number when there's a small change. And second, the mix of personnel who's doing the work changes over time. This is not one person. So we may, over the years, have a new staff person comes on at a different rate than the previous person. So there's a little bit of complexity behind the scenes, but the overall goal is to be close to good approximation of the actual time spent.
Okay, understood. I just want to make sure we're properly accounting for all of our labor costs that go into that. Okay, thank you. Kurt, can you go back to that screen where you showed the rate with the graph that you had where the $77? Yeah, that one. So what you're saying here is that on the even progression, we're charging 77. So in what the green line shows, so this is including the phases for the treatment plant connection or the liquid processing system improvements that we have. But then we've got that gap that we're going to have, that we're basically having to cover because that money will never be recovered really because the charge doesn't get up there until 8 years later or 5 years in this case. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, yeah. So if in 2018 the decision was made to implement the treatment plant connection, implement this on a new basis on the value of the plant. So if we would have implemented it in that first year, the full rate, it would have been around $120, $115, $120 where this point is. But we elected to do an 8-step ramp up through 2026 and distribute that as evenly as feasible. And so we are now in step 3 of that eight-year ramp up. And as you can see, this green line, this is the value of the treatment plant continues to go up every year. We are predicting that we have improvements that are planned in the capital plan that was just approved. So yes, the value of the treatment plant keeps going up, and this number is changing, and we're trying to just keep that line as straight as possible to get to where we need to be in 2026.
Well, I think to me it's a good graph because it shows that what we're doing and how we're essentially at this point in time subsidizing, for lack of a better term that comes to mind, the treatment plant connection charges, and maybe a similar thing with some of the conveyance facilities. So that's it's a good graph that shows the effect of that decision that we made back in 17-18.
And President Hubble, it's important to note that the commission received significant public input and input from our owner communities on the ramp up of this, and that was the reason why the commission decided for a gentle phase in to respond to that significant public input we received from the development community and from some of the communities that were experiencing growth.
Yeah, I fully remember that, but I just think it's a good graph that shows the effect on the district for having done that. So they can't come back and say, well, we're clearly it's a benefit to the to somebody other than the district. Okay. Anybody else have any? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the connection charge rates in the plan review, direct connection and annexation fees that Kurt presented? That's our resolutions R5 and R6.
I would move approval of both resolutions, R5 and R6. Brad Murphy.
And it's Wilson, I'll second.
I didn't, who was the second? Was that Sarah?
Sarah and Tom.
Sarah got it.
Sarah, okay, we'll give it to Commissioner Eskridge. And motion by Commissioner Murphy, second by Commissioner Eskridge to approve the rates in R5 and 6. Do we have any further comments or questions?
President Hubble, this is Amanda Wegner. If I could just jump in here for a moment. I know we have a few representatives from our owner communities on, and I did just answer a question about when the rate letters are coming out, and that is going to be tomorrow. I know we have a few people on the live stream as well, so I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that the rate letters regarding all the things that we've been talking about in this meeting, those will be coming out shortly.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. So anybody else have anything? Okay, we have the motion by Commissioner Murphy, second by Commissioner Eskridge. Do we want to do a roll call here? Janelle, could you do that, please?
Of course. Commissioner Bookland.
Aye.
Commissioner Eskridge.
Aye.
Commissioner Foster.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubble.
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer. Okay, we will skip Commissioner Meyer for a moment. Commissioner Murphy.
Aye.
Commissioner Swanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Wilson.
Aye.
And we'll try again. Commissioner Meyer.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks. My bad. Sorry about that.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Janelle, for doing that. And thank you, Kurt, for the presentation. That will move us to item 4D, the review and approval of service contract for reliability-centered maintenance implementation. Matt Schuman is going to lead this off.
Okay, good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Matt.
Okay, thank you, President Hubble and the commissioners for this opportunity. My name is Matt Schuman, and I'm the Asset Management and Maintenance System Admin at the district. I'm here today asking for your approval to resolution number 2020-10-29-R7, awarding a professional services contract to Reliability X to help us roll out or continue rolling out reliability-centered maintenance at the district. So RCM is something I'm really passionate about. Because I've seen firsthand in previous roles the impact it can have on an organization. So I'm excited to give you an update today on our RCM initiatives to date at the district, as well as discuss why additional consultant support is necessary at this time. So a little bit about me. I'm a member of the Department of Planning and Strategy, and I report directly to Seth McClure. I'm primarily responsible for selecting and helping implement a new computerized maintenance management system, or CMMS. So a CMMS is a tool that organizations use to help manage operations and maintenance of assets. The current tool the district has is called WAM, and that tool is primarily owned and utilized by the maintenance, operations, and purchasing teams. My role is primarily that of a coach and a liaison. So what I help do is I help improve our current processes, as well as identify future needs for the next technology. RCM provides a structure and a framework that helps guide how we review said processes and improve them following some best practice standards. Just a quick check. Can everybody see my screen all right so far?
Looking good, Matt.
Thank you. A little bit about RCM, or reliability-centered maintenance. In the most basic terms, it's a set of fundamentals that shifts your operating and maintenance culture from one that's constantly reacting to equipment failures and fixing those, to one that's focused on executing a set of planned preventative tasks that prevent those failures from happening in the first place. The main benefit of this shift is it changes an organization from the chaos of constantly reacting to these unplanned failures, to one that's in more control and therefore manageable. My background is I worked for both Caterpillar and Nestle, implementing RCM in both US and international facilities. I've seen firsthand the positive impact this shift can have not only on operational results, but on the culture of an organization. In terms of results here, I'd like to talk about them in something that we're familiar with, which are the pillars of our organization. The main benefit of RCM is it increases the reliability of our critical assets. So that reliability, or that increase in reliability, can be thought of as an input that impacts each of the 5 pillars that ultimately lead up to our mission. Let me give some examples. So reliable equipment, it runs more continuously and therefore runs more efficiently. Reliable equipment, it doesn't break down unexpectedly. So overall, we can reduce risk to our customer communities. Reliable equipment, it doesn't require unplanned interventions. Every time you work on a piece of equipment in an emergency or unplanned manner, you introduce unforeseen risks to our operations and maintenance employees. If you can shift those interventions around to ones that you have time to pre-plan the work and understand the hazards, you can ultimately increase your employee safety. Reliable equipment, it reduces firefighting. When your process is in control, you free up more time for your employees to really look at additional continuous improvement initiatives that overall improve results. And then finally, the one that's probably most relatable is reliable equipment. It's fixed before failure. Anytime you fix a piece of equipment before it catastrophically fails, you use less parts and you use less labor, ultimately lowering costs. I know these seem like some bold claims. I'm comfortable making them, however, because once again, I've seen firsthand the benefit on each of these areas in my previous roles, and I know we can make them happen here. So at this point, you're probably asking yourself, what is somebody responsible for replacing a computer system, talking so much about reliability, process, that sort of thing? And to me, one of the key points I want to drive home here is that process and the technology used to support that process has to go hand in hand. And let me provide an example. Historically at the district, we've had processes that are highly reactive, right? You're constantly reacting to breakdowns that happen to our equipment. Therefore, we've configured our current CMMS system, which is WHAM, to react to those breakdowns. If we simply take those current processes and apply them in a new technology, we're not going to see an impact to the reliability of our assets. We have to first shift our behaviors, our thinking, and our processes to be highly proactive before we can truly understand the right technology that's going to support those more proactive processes versus hinder them. We've begun to see a lot of momentum with this approach, specifically with the maintenance department, because we've been rolling out some foundational RCM changes over the past 6 months. So I'd like to shift a little bit and go into what we've done so far. First and foremost, when we started this review, we noticed that each department had a different way of managing the data and the supporting processes in our current CMMS system. And this made management and improvement almost impossible. We've transitioned staff to a single workflow that they use to manage their processes following best practice. Additionally, before, technicians were responsible for not only working on the equipment, fixing equipment, but they were also responsible for performing a large amount of administrative planning duties to support. We've implemented a planner role in the 3 core maintenance departments that takes some of the administrative pre-planning from the technician. It allows our staff to focus on their expertise and get more effective work done. To help support the process rollout, we've rolled out work instructions, process flows, and training videos that show the right way to utilize our current CMMS to support the process. Before this, there was 0 standard training on how to properly use WHAM to support maintenance practices. And then finally, we've established a weekly alignment meeting where we track a standard set of measures and we have a standard meeting agenda. And it's really about tracking progress and improvement as we're rolling these processes out. What's been nice about this meeting is it's facilitated a lot of collaboration and improvement between different departments, and we've gotten better over time. So these are basic changes. We're just getting started, but what I'm excited to show is that we've been seeing some really positive results thus far. So what this graph shows is our compliance to completing priority work by the maintenance and purchasing teams. Over the course of the last few months, so we implemented these changes in early May. And the blue line shows our compliance to completing the pre-planning by the planner role. And the red line shows our compliance to getting the critical parts on time when we need them. Our target or best practice standard is we should be able to hit 90% of our target for hitting these priorities. And as you can see on the chart, as our planners have gotten more effective at pre-planning work and using the process flows, so has their ability to get the right part on time when we need it to ultimately fix the equipment. Why is this important? Well, going back to when I first started talking with maintenance personnel, this was the #1 complaint, getting the parts on time. We're seeing that reflected in the measures, but we're also seeing that reflected in people who were previously on the fence about these changes, starting to say, you know what, I can see how RCM works and I can see the benefit and it does make my life easier. So those are some really positive things we're seeing already with this rollout. What we've done thus far is build, I guess, a foundation. We built engagement and buy-in that RCM can work at the district. We have some momentum. We don't want to lose it. And that's why we're asking for some additional consultant support to keep it going. So to select this consultant, we use the standard RFP process utilized by the district. So we advertised with postings and we made a few direct contacts to several firms and we received 4 total responses. We had a multifunctional team from planning and strategy and O&M review each response and score with a set criteria. After the scoring, there was a clear unanimous decision that Reliability X was the right consultant to support us on our continuing journey. And here's why. Reliability X really provides us a fresh perspective and deep expertise that's going to help us, first and foremost, continue to link RCM with our strategic goals. This is really about doing the right things and delivering the right results for the organization. Additionally, Reliability X, you can't change your behaviors and think differently until you've been trained to do so. Reliability X is a leader in training and coaching. They've even trained some of our employees already through the UW-Madison. So they're a recognized leader in this department. We're going to utilize that knowledge here. Other industries and organizations, they've been implementing RCM for 20+ years. During that time, they've learned what works and what doesn't. We can use that learning to not reinvent the wheel, but become more efficient in our rollout. Reliability X brings a breadth of knowledge in these best practices to the table. And then finally, as you're rolling out a change, I think it's easy to become attached to an internal process, thinking it's the best. But having an external set of eyes that challenges the progress and holds you accountable is really key to making sure you're delivering the results that you said you were going to do. So overall, I'd like to finish here. Those are the key reasons why we're asking for your approval to Resolution R7, awarding the professional services contract to Reliability X. That's all I have today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any questions for Matt? Okay, Matt, I had one. You know, they've always had that. I don't know if you've seen it. You probably have that chart with their asset management that has the rows and the columns and all that type of grading. So this is going to interface with that graph, their chart that we've always seen. You give better data as to some of the more intricate parts of equipment and so forth and when they need to be replaced, rather than just timing or
Right. Yeah,
expected?
I think it's a piece of it. It's definitely linked to our strategic asset management plan, which a portion of that is grading our current assets and the condition they're in. But RCM mostly focuses on better maintaining the assets you already have or the critical assets you already have to the right level to improve in performance and reliability. So it's directly linked, but it's less about just replacing with new and more about over its life, what's the right maintenance strategy that's going to drive optimum performance for our assets. Does that explanation make sense?
Yeah, it does. And so this follow-up question, you said you worked at Nestle and Caterpillar, and do you have any idea, or do they do any calculations as to payback time for, costs if they had done something like this?
Sure. The last implementation I was involved with was over a 5-year period. So this is not necessarily like a short-term thing. And before I started the advanced implementation, they had been working on it for 10 years prior to that. So this is a long-term culture change, if you will. But one of the main benefits they had gotten back is they added capacity while reducing maintenance cost on their equipment. So I know capacity is not necessarily a relatable thing for our organization, but for them, the value was they were able to basically gain back production days while not spending more on the maintenance of their equipment. It's one of the challenges with me coming from private industry is going to be how do we apply these methodologies to our organization? But for me, a positive of Reliability X is they bring some experience with that. And that was my first point, is how do we link RCM in a better way to our strategic objectives?
I got that. One thing, there's something you just never can predict. I don't think anybody was able to properly predict when we had that leak. I can't remember what pump station it was. All of a sudden the valve, that there was a failure in the iron or metal pipe. And, I had that here at my house, 10 years in, new 10-year-old house, the water service failed and happened to be just on my side of the cutoff valve. But everybody else in the block has the same water service. They never had the problem. I just happened to get a house where it was, somebody didn't quite set it right, and then the water ate away. So you're always going to have that kind of problem, which is always going to be that kind of firefighting. So how do you build that into the whole scheme of things?
It's a complicated process to do a full RCM analysis. So one of the first things you have to make sure is, do you have a clear understanding of the most critical assets that you're going to be performing that analysis on? But after you decide which assets you're going to apply this thinking against, it really is about understanding the total potential failure modes that asset could have. And then you talk about proactive things that you can either implement, so procedures, policies, maintenance strategies that could affect that, or design features that you could change to prevent that from happening. So I guess my response is, yeah, there's always an opportunity for these unplanned events to happen. But over time, what you start to see is some trends in planned processes that can start to prevent them. And you do see a reduction. So, I mean, for me, I guess a different industry, but I got to see a couple plants that were going on 5+ years without a breakdown in their facility. And it wasn't anything special about their equipment. They were just super focused on understanding why something failed and then putting in the right activities and tasks to make sure it never happened again. So a lot of this is about, if it failed on you, that's okay. What do we learn from that failure? And what are we going to do differently the next time to make sure it never happens again? Does that answer your question as well?
It does. It's helpful. Thank you. Okay, I'm sorry to have dominated. Those just questions that came to mind.
I appreciate the questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Does anybody else have any other questions? I don't see any hands. So do we have a motion to approve the contract with reliability centered maintenance? I think that was the cost not to exceed 150,000. That is resolution number 7.
I'll make that motion as recommended.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Wilson. Second by,
This is Bookland. I'll second it.
okay, second by Commissioner Bookland. So we have a motion by Commissioner Wilson, second by Commissioner Bookland to approve the service contract with liability centered maintenance. And that's also includes our 7. Do we have any further comments or discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. Rachel, you're going to present on the review of bids and award a contract for the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor improvements from McKee to Dunn's Marsh.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Good morning. My name is Rachel File, and I'm a project engineer here at the district. Can everyone hear me and see my screen okay?
You're good to go, Rachel.
Thank you. Like Commissioner mentioned, I'm here today presenting the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor Improvements Project. The outline is to start off with a brief overview of the project. You may remember seeing a project update back in August, so today will just be a quick refresher. After that, we have 2 resolution items. The first is the review of bids and award of contract. That is resolution item number 8. The second item is the award of engineering phase services, and that is resolution item number 9. So with that, let's get started on just a project refresher. So to trigger your memory, this project is located along the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor. This interceptor is located south of the Beltline, where it collects and carries wastewater from Madison, Middleton, Fitchburg, and Verona to our wastewater treatment plant. The project area on this interceptor is highlighted in this graphic here in yellow. As you can see, that's just north of McKee Road and west of Dunn's Marsh, so right here in this area. So now let's zoom in on the project area itself. The project area encompasses 4,200 feet of existing concrete pipe, which was installed in 1965. This pipe will be replaced due to corrosion and capacity needs. The project will include a new interceptor, manholes, local sewer connections, abandonment of the existing line, and also relocating various utilities and trail and landscape restoration. You may have noticed or remember that this is along the Cannonball and Military Ridge Trail. And so as part of this project, we will be detouring as well. So that includes our brief project recap. Let's move into the first resolution item, number 8, review of bids and award of contract. So last month, the project was advertised in the Wisconsin State Journal and on Quest CDN. There were 8 pre-qualified bidders listed below. Bids were accepted on October 15th. 6 prime bids were received. Bids were reviewed by the district and found to be responsive and responsible, meeting requirements. The bids received were within the budget. The lowest was within the budgeted amount, and the lowest apparent bidder, RG Houston, is qualified to perform the work. So when we take the lowest apparent bidder amount, that would be here the 3.3 million, plus contingency and other anticipated construction costs, we get about 3.4 million to plug into our project cost breakdown table. So that first table below, again, where I have circled is the construction costs. And then the second item would be the district staff and consultant services. So when we plug in that bid amount, you can see where we fall on our current estimate. The total project cost is estimated to be $4,061,000. And this is approximately $560,000 below the 2020 budget number. Furthermore, the 2021 capital budget, which was approved today, we're also well below that as well. That number is $4,755,000. So you can see that with this apparent low bidder, we are comfortably within budget. The district recommends the award of contract to RG Houston. Construction is anticipated to start later this year with substantial completion in October of 21. With that, just wanted to ask any questions that you might have for me.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you very much, Rachel. So this is for R8. I just have one question. If you could go back to your cost page, please.
Sure.
And so you've got 575,000 now estimated for district staff and consultant services. Do you know what that number is for the consultant, MSA?
Yes, so for construction, that's actually in the next resolution item. Their proposed construction estimate is 118,000 for construction, and that is factored into that 575,000 number
Right.
that you.
And so, what was their cost of the design?
It was 163,000.
Okay, so the construction is almost similar, basically. The construction inspection almost similar. And do you find that? Okay, we'll get into that next. Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, if not, oh, my iPad, just a second here. Okay, do we have a motion to approve the award of contract for resolution R8 awarding the interceptor improvements on the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor from McKee to Dunn's Marsh? It's also resolution R8.
So moved, Commissioner Meyer.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer. Do we have a second?
Second, Commissioner Eskridge.
And a second by Commissioner Eskridge. So we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Eskridge to approve R8. That's the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor Improvements-McKee to Dunn's Marsh. RG Houston, the low bidder. Any further comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? None. Motion carries. Okay, Rachel, on to the next one then.
Great, thank you. So the engineering firm that was mentioned, MSA Professional Services, completed the design of this project. The district has been happy with their service to date, and their proposal of, we'll get into the number in the next slide, is reasonable and within the project budget. We also looked at, how does this compare to other projects of a similar size and cost? And it is within the parameters of other projects as well. So as I mentioned, their proposal is for $118,000. And again, kind of revisiting this table, that's included in the $575,000 under that second line item there, which again is below the overall is below the 2020 budget number and the 2021 budget number as well. And so the district does recommend the approval of construction phase engineering services to MSA. I can also mention that in this proposal, It's not just the engineering services, but they are providing surveying and being this along the trail and vegetation will be disturbed. They are providing us with support for vegetation restoration. A landscape architect will be contracted through MSA, and that's also included in this proposal number as well. And so with that, are there any questions?
Okay, does anybody have any questions? Okay, I don't think so. Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. Do we have a motion to approve the engineering services agreement with MSA for the project?
So moved, Commissioner Meyer.
Motion by Commissioner Meyer. Do we have a second?
Wilson, I'll second.
Oh, second by Commissioner Wilson. So we have a motion by Commissioner Meyer, second by Commissioner Wilson to approve the resolution number 9, the engineering services construction phase for the Nine Springs Valley Interceptor improvements from McKee Road to Dunn's Marsh. Any further comments or questions? Nope, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, none. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Rachel, that moves us to the approval of increased transaction amount for Metrogro hauling contracts. Marty?
All right, good morning, commissioners. Let me get this queued up here. So thank you for introducing this topic for me. I just wanted to start out by just giving a quick summary of what happened with Metrogro over the last year and why we're coming for additional additional authority for the current Metrogro hauling contract. So if you recall, in 2019, we had a lot of wet weather in the spring, but we actually had early snow in the fall. So with wet weather, early winter in 2019, we were prevented from land applying the amount of biosolids that we needed to gain winter storage going into 2020. So the photo you see up on the screen right now was taken a week after Halloween. So this is what we were dealing with a week after Halloween. And compare that to what you see out your window today. We're coming up around the same time period, very different. So we know that weather challenges can play a role in how Metrogro actually can land apply. So because we had not able to get out as much as we needed to last fall, that increased the need for hauling this spring in 2020. And we know that we have to have enough storage in the winter or else we won't have a hauling program. So it's an important thing for us to gain storage. So when we found at the end of 2019 or around this time in 2019, we would not have capacity to store, we had to look for an alternate method of disposal. So we could not land apply. And so we chose landfilling. And we determined based on our calculations that typically in a fall season or a hauling season, we usually need to get out about 7 million gallons of biosolids. So at the time last year, when we figured out that we weren't be able to land apply, we knew we had to dewater and landfill 7 million gallons. And that's based upon minimum storage needs, which is about 5 million gallons. And then because we hauled less than expected in 2019, we needed additional capacity, which is about 2 million gallons. So that's how we came up with that 7 million gallon number as a target for us to dewater and landfill. And we knew that if we hit that target, that would give us good capacity heading into 2020, just in case we had a repeat of 2019. So we were covering all of our bases. Unfortunately, the actual volume that we planned on contracting with to landfill was less than the 7 million gallons. And that was due to a variety of factors. Some were weather related, some were equipment related. But the bottom line is that our plan to hire a contractor for that dewatering and landfilling, we didn't quite reach our goal. What we were able to do was still dewater and landfill, but instead of hitting that 7 million gallon goal, we just were able to dewater and landfill the minimum amount necessary to keep our storage tanks from overflowing, but we weren't able to provide any additional capacity relief because we weren't able to get to that full 7 million gallons. So because we didn't reach our goal, we weren't able to get the result of reaching our goal, which was actually starting hauling in 2020 with a lot of capacity. We actually started 2020 with more material in our storage tanks than we ever really had. And so this graph that you see up on the screen, the y-axis on the left axis is the storage level of the tank. So think of the bottom where you see a number 1, but it might not be visible. But the bottom of the y-axis is like if the tank is empty, and the top of the y-axis is like the tank is full. And you can see that, you know, this is all of our storage tanks combined. So we have 3 storage tanks, and combined they hold about 17, 18 million gallons of biosolids. So look at the y-axis in that way, and the x-axis along the bottom is time. So it's months, months of the year. And it's showing January through September currently. So this is for 2020, this graph. So if you can see the colors are different years. And so really we're looking at yellow, which is 2020, and the other colors are previous years. You can see very clearly that in 2020, we started our storage well above what we typically have because we weren't able to draw it down in the fall to get us to the capacity we needed. So we were starting at a deficit, so to speak, when it comes to storage capacity. The interesting thing I want to call about this graph is that you notice that we had a high spike in yellow because we had decreased capacity, weren't able to haul out. But then as we get to the spring in April and May, you can see the yellow dip, which means that we gained a bunch of storage this spring. And that was because we had favorable dry weather that allowed us to land apply a greater amount in the first half of this year that we typically are able to. So, the stars aligned, so to speak. We had more storage than we were having to expect, but we actually had favorable weather this spring to actually get us back to where we needed to do. So I do want to give a shout out to the Metrogro crew and others at the district who really worked hard this spring to get us back to where we needed to be with the deficit we had from last year's weather. So if you look at this end of the graph, we'll look through September to the right side of the graph, you'll see that we're in good shape heading into the fall this year. And our fall hauling so far has been very good. We've had good weather, so we're in good shape. So the effect from last year is not dominoing into this year as we feared. So we're good to go. So that brings me to my request. So because we had a lot more material to haul this year, we actually had weather to do it. We were out there doing a bunch of work. And so our hauling expenses are going to exceed our current contract authorization that the commission authorized this current spring in 2020. And so we're requesting an additional $195,000 to cover our hauling costs this year. So at that, I'll take any questions. Thanks.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Marty? Okay, Grant's got one.
Thank you. Yeah, this all sounds great. Good news. Does the increased expenses for hauling, how does that relate to, I would expect that the reduced expenses that we had anticipated with needing to landfill?
Yes, good question. So last fall, 2019, when we found ourselves in this situation, we sort of anticipated what it would cost to dewater and landfill with our plan A. And so that's when we came with a budget amendment, the commission in 2020 to increase our expenditures around $750,000. What ended up happening, plan A didn't work out as I explained. So our actual dewatering landfilling costs were about half of that. So that's where we sit. So I guess, Grant, the answer to your question is yes, we spent less than we anticipated, and so there's a little capacity there. Is that your question?
Yeah, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to find the attachments for this item, and probably just my inability to navigate the new view. But I guess if what's being requested now is approval for the increased transaction amount for the Metrogro, is that essentially then a transfer from what we'd already allowed for increased costs for the landfilling, which it sounds like was not used? How do those two numbers relate to each other, and are we sort of, yeah, I guess maybe I'm missing something, but I guess my point is how does the increased cost for hauling relate to the decreased cost and what we had planned to landfill?
So it relates in the sense that we have a completely existing budget capacity in the current budget to handle this increased contract amount.
Well, and I think Marty, also this is costing us less to land apply than what we anticipated with the landfilling. So while we expected to spend $775,000 to get this material removed, we spent half of that, and now we're spending about what Marty's proposing here to actually remove it at a lower cost than landfilling.
Okay, so
yeah,
I
guess I was just looking for the number, kind of what the total impact is.
So it sounds like we spent about half of the 750,000. So that's say $375,000, and now we're adding $190,000 onto that to do the extra hauling. So we're still below the 750. Does that make sense?
Yep, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Grant. Any other questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the resolution and the increased transaction amount for Metrogro hauling contracts that I think is R10?
Commissioner Eskridge, I move adoption.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Eskridge, second by?
I'll second it.
Second by
Murphy.
Commissioner Murphy. So we have a motion by Commissioner Eskridge, second by Commissioner Murphy to approve the resolution number 10 relating to the approval of increased transaction amount for Metrogro hauling contracts. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you, Marty. Okay, that takes us to our commission policy handbook or policy book amendment to clarify district owners, partners, and stakeholders. And I want to get to that in a second. And Bill Walker, I think you were going to lead this off.
Yes, indeed. Good morning, everyone. I'm Bill Walker, Director of the Strategy and Planning Department. Here to hopefully wrap up the issue of district ownership under policy governance. Before I start this, I'm going to take this opportunity to note something. You heard presentations from Kurt Sauser and Matt Schumann, and they're both in my department, which I point out partly out of pride over their presentations, but mostly because these topics are related in a way that I'd like you to understand. One main job of our department is to improve how the district manages its investments for all of its capital assets, and that includes managing how we do our spending, revenue, and financing. Kurt's work ties to expanding our system and paying for it. Matt's work ties to being good stewards of the assets we've already bought and making smart decisions about repair and replacement spending. And my topic, district owners, ties to one of Matt's points. We want to link all of this investment work to the overall purpose of the district, and that links to policy governance ownership. So let's get back up to speed on that issue. In the last commission meeting, we recommended that you amend the commission policy book in two places. First, amend the global outcome policy to specify that district owners are those municipalities with authority to appoint commissioners. And second, amend the decision-making policy to specify that when interests conflict, district owners have priority, but that partners and stakeholders' interests are important and will be considered as much as possible. We also asked for permission to edit the rest of the policy book to use terminology consistent with those first two changes. In the discussion, you voiced no concerns with the last two items on this list, so we've brought them back as is, and I won't talk any further about them. But there was a question about the first item. Commissioner Foster made a motion for a different definition of district owner, but the implications of that definition were not immediately clear. So we did a little bit of analysis and we're back. We are bringing back the same recommendation, and the motion is option 1 in the packet. Let's compare them using this table that we'll fill in as we go. To repeat, the recommendation would define policy governance owners in terms of authority to appoint. Option 1 is based instead on this idea of owning or operating a system. These two options differ in their reasoning, obviously. The recommendation is based on the notions of accountability and control, which was a point that came up 2 meetings ago, including proportionality of control. Some municipalities appoint more commissioners than others. Option 1 is based instead on the idea that owners be regarded as those who actually participate in the regional system in some way. Now, for both of these, we can draw inspiration from the statute. And before I reveal this comparison, I want to make it very clear that this is not a statutory interpretation task. We're discussing how the commission wants to think about its, quote, owners under policy governance model. And no matter how many times you read it or how many ways you parse it, the statute is not going to answer that question for you. It is up to you to decide this. Here we're just looking at the statutes, as I say, for inspiration in how to think about it. Recommendation is inspired, obviously, by the statute that already exists about appointment authority. Option 1 is inspired by the creation and dissolution statutes. A bunch of municipalities can band together and create a sewerage district if they want to, and those that are already in a district can band together and try to dissolve it. The statutes that allow those things use this own or operate language in option 1. That's where that phrasing came from. There's also a practical difference here. To determine ownership under option 1, you look at the situation on the ground, so to speak. Do you own or operate a sewage system in our territory? Then we'll treat you as an owner, and under option 1. And by definition, any municipality that does not actually own or operate a system is excluded from the option 1 list. But they would be included in the recommendation. And there are currently 3 towns in that situation: Blooming Grove, Burke, and Middleton. So those are the differences that we can think of. And I want to push the point again here. You're looking to define district owners in a way that supports your work under policy governance. In that light, is the reasoning behind each option? In what ways is that relevant to the goal? In other words, will it help you govern better if you think about ownership in terms of accountability, or if you think about it in terms of the shared regional role? And similarly, will it help you govern better if you think about owners as including the 3 towns I mentioned or excluding them? So here's what we're asking for. If you prefer the recommended definition, please adopt resolution R11 as proposed. And if you prefer the option 1 definition, adopt the same resolution, but specify to us that we should use that own and operate definition. Everything else is the same. Red at the bottom of the slide are the two issues I just highlighted: the reasoning behind the 2 options and the fact that the exclusion issue. So if you'd like, I can put the comparison table back up. Otherwise, that's all I have, and I'll turn it back to you, President Hubble.
Bill, if I could just jump in here real quickly before the commission asks questions and has comments. When our governance changed in 2015, our biggest owner spoke explicitly about ownership and took the side of using appointment authority to get the desired outcomes from the district. And that's why we went from a 5-member commission to a 9-member commission. And Commissioner Meyer and Commissioner Hubble will recall at the time that the phosphorus compliance issue was not yet fully resolved for us. And we were looking at $130 million price tag. And there was a lot of concern on how those costs would be allocated to communities, and a lot of angst over that. And so our owner communities wanted to take control of that process through their appointment authority, and that's why the state law was changed. So that's just a little bit of a history of the foundation, which is more of a policy level and less of a statutory issue.
Okay, thank you, Bill and Michael. Okay, so I think the way I recall was it was left with the alternate motion, or the amendment motion, to adopt what is identified basically as option 1, that we have the change as indicated in the packet that reads, district owners or each municipality which jointly or separately owns or operates a sewage collection and disposal system which has territory included in the district boundary. As opposed, so that's the amendment motion that was on that we had placed. So let's open that up for discussion. Anybody have any further comments or questions that they wish to bring up? Ezra and Grant?
Thanks, President Hubble. I wanted to ask Bill, and this could have been about Paul, but I want to have all of us understand, is there something about the 3, essentially it comes down to these 3 towns in question. Is there something about statute or our rules or anything else that says they, at the moment that they decide to begin to own and operate a system, are they sort of right into the district without any complicated process, or and is there something different about those 3 towns as opposed to, let's say, some other town that's farther outside of the district and would take more procedural or legal steps in order to hook up to the district? Is there something we maybe want to know about the difference there, if indeed there is one?
I am not aware of a difference. Paul, I think you're better suited to answer that question if you can.
I'm not aware of a difference either, but the nature of the formation talks about whether it is reasonable and promotes public welfare and so forth. And so the further you get away and the further outlying you are, the more challenging that becomes to meet those standards. But as you know, we included the area around Lake Wabisa a few years ago because of some situations they had there, and there's a lot of intervening territory between that's not included. So short answer is there isn't a statutory difference, but the statutory language would make it more difficult for those other communities to join.
And I guess I should add there's a practical geographic difference. The 3 we're talking about are already inside our territory, and joining another community would be a territorial expansion conversation.
Correct.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. I mean, because if we go back to understanding why those 3 were included in the accountability, I'll say under the accountability umbrella in the statutory changes to our commission, structure, it was because of it was a mapping reality. It was a geography reality, right? Their territory falls within the district's territory, even though they don't own or operate a system. Am I understanding all of that right, or have I gotten anything wrong there?
Well, Commissioner Meyer, this is Paul. I think that if we can just speak frankly here, the legislation was drafted through the budget process in a relatively hasty manner. And I think even the legislation itself kind of refers to owners and operators, but the appointment power was delegated to the boards or organizations that govern villages and towns. And so I don't know that there was a whole lot of thought that went into that other than the expediency of having some kind of organization to appoint members. And the fact that those organizations include members that aren't served, I don't think was actually a matter of much thought. So I guess I would go back to Bill's point, which is ultimately this is much more about how the district operates from an accountability standpoint than it is about fine points in the statutory language.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, Ezra, for the question. Grant, I think you're up next, and then Tom.
Thank you, and thanks, Bill, for this. Could you maybe pull up that grid again? I think that might be helpful to look at. So, so I put forward those option one, and I think at our last meeting, shared that I didn't feel super strongly about it. I think we've all seen, if you've looked at the other materials, you see that, the end result is very, very similar. But as I think Bill and others have said today, I mean, our question really is about, how does this affect our thinking? So I reflected a lot on it after that meeting, did some more research on it, and I would say have become probably more convinced that option one is the better framework for us to think about it. And I just wanted to talk to a couple things. So one, I think this I would agree with everything on this chart, maybe with the exception of the reasoning row. And the way that I see that there, where it says that the original recommendation focuses on accountability, control, and proportionality, and option one is about shared role in regional sewer system. I think in a lot of our conversations, it's really going to come down to accountability, and that's maybe where we should focus our conversation. I, for one, don't believe that we should limit the way that we think about accountability to our owners. I think we've clearly talked about owners, partners, and other stakeholders, and I, at least personally, feel very much accountable across the board there. I think there are important distinctions, and I think the fact that we landed on the word owner is really significant. And the reason that I continue to recommend option one is that I actually do feel that it is, as Paul said, it's not precisely defined in terms of owner in the statute, but I think looking at that 200.05 and 07, so who can create, who has to agree to it, who is part of that, of the district when it's formed, and also 07, which talks about, I guess in our case, hopefully the unlikely scenario that we would dissolve, and who has authority to dissolve the district, and where the assets go in that case. In both of those cases, it is talking about the definition as written in option one. And so I think that it really is important to have our definition of owner match the actual legal and fiscal owners of the district. And I don't think that discounts the importance of partners. And I certainly believe that municipalities that don't meet that owner definition, but that have territory and residents that might be served by the district are certainly important stakeholders, and I would say even partners. But I don't believe that they are legally owners. And so I guess that's part of why I think it's an important distinction. In terms of the sort of original recommendation to use appointing authority, I think it makes me uncomfortable for a few reasons. Number one, if you look at So before the change happened, appointment authority happened by the county executive, right? So did that mean that that back at that point, we were accountable to the county and not to the municipalities that, who we'd always talked about as our customers? Did the county as an entity, were they the owner then in that case because the county executive had appointing authority? That doesn't make sense to me. And I think the fact that was updated to what it is now was really to try and get the appointing authority more in line with ownership. And I think it's very close, but again, it's not, it still is a proxy for that, right? And I'm fine with what that change was. It seems like it gets something that's relatively reflective, in terms of proportionality. But the way I understand it and the way I read it is, again, it's trying to approximate the true ownership, which really truly is the municipalities that own sewer systems that are part of the Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District. I think in to me, very clear legal ways. So, if we tie it with appointment authority, does that mean that our owners would change in the future if that got adjusted? I don't believe that's the case. I think the owners are the owners. I don't think it's good practice to tie it to that. And probably, I think importantly, we as individual commissioners, we're appointed by specific appointing authorities, but I personally don't feel like I am solely or even primarily accountable to the mayor of Madison, who is the actual appointing authority, or even the city of Madison or the city of Madison residents. I believe that our authority and our responsibility and our accountability as a commission is to the district. We are charged with running the district very, very broadly. And to me, it's problematic for us to think individually as commissioners that our accountability ties back to whoever appointed us in a way that is larger than what I think our accountability is, which is to the actual owners of the district, which are all the municipalities that own those systems and that are connected in. And I would argue for a broader understanding of accountability. And I think we are also accountable to our partners. I think we're accountable to all stakeholders, to people that live downstream of us. I feel certainly accountable to the impacts that we have in our decision making. So I guess for all those reasons, I still very much support option one. I think it would be a mistake to think of accountability in terms of our appointing authority. And I think it's just a not bad, but also not precise proxy for actual ownership, which I think is relatively clear in the other sections of the statute. So I think it's an interesting conversation and looking forward to hearing from others as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Grant. Tom, you're up.
Well, I'm not in favor of option one. And there's a couple of reasons why. Number one, we had our staff go through this and make a recommendation. And I don't always defer to what two of the smartest people I know would recommend to us. But here, I think that's important, that the people that actually operate the system made a recommendation to us that seemed very logical. Number two, I think why would we want to exclude 3 communities from the definition of ownership? And that's what we'll be doing here. And it's 3 towns. And my appointment is by 3 towns. And Grant, when I'm on this commission, I am thinking about who I'm representing, because that's why I was appointed here, to represent those communities. And to take those 3, and that's really the only difference here. You're taking those 3 communities with a small change in the definition and not allowing them to be included as an owner. It seems that having a little trouble in why we would really want to do that here. And the other reason why is, I can give an example. Just a little while ago, we approved an extension and an annexation into the district that was in the town of Middleton. It jumped an area that was in the city of Madison already for development. The city of Madison is going to provide sewer, of course, to their service area, and then they are going to now be providing service in an area that's in the town of Middleton. That area that's in the town of Middleton did not have to connect to the system. There could have been 80 holes in the ground for septic. There's probably going to be 80 holes in the ground for wells, but they did not need to do that. And they chose to work with the city of Madison to provide sewer service in that community. And it seems to me that that's a decision that the city of Middleton or the town of Middleton can make as its ability to have sewer service from MMSD. It's decided that we'll use the city of Madison to provide sewer to our community rather than have our own sewer utility. And that sounds like an owner making a decision to me. And they did vote, on our side for allowing sewer service to be in their community and provided that way. So it seems to me, like I said, one, we got a well-written, well-drafted, well-thought-out staff recommendation. They are involved in appointing, and it's that seems important to me. And you just be excluding those three towns from this definition. I don't know why we wouldn't want to be a little more inclusive. And then the third reason is just that example I gave, that the town of Middleton, using its ability to provide service, could have formed its own sewer district. It could have been the town of Middleton could have done and decided to provide their own service and petition the district to actually allow it. And why wouldn't we have? I mean, why would we want to create a community that has a disincentive to connect to our system as opposed to creating 80 septic holes? It just seems to me that we should be inclusive and keep that going. So those are my reasonings, Tom, while I support the recommendation that was given to us from staff.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Ezra, you have your hand up again. Did you have any more comments?
Sorry about that. I must still be up from before. I'll take that down.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any comments? I have a question for Brad. He may recall. I know in 2022, the town of Madison will be absorbed by the cities of Fitchburg and Madison. And Madison also had agreements with Burke and Blooming Grove. And I can't remember what years those were. Those were, I think, like 23 and 24.
I don't remember the exact years as well. The town of Blooming Grove has a shorter time frame than the town of Burke. The town of Blooming Grove, some of the land is being transferred in phases. The town of Burke, not all of the town of Burke will come to the city of Madison. I believe part of it goes to DeForest and possibly Sun Prairie. So I'm not sure of the time frame. The town of Middleton is a longer term agreement, and at the end of that agreement, the lands, I believe, east of Pioneer Road, generally speaking, would come into the city of Madison. The lands west of Pioneer Road stay in the township. So I believe that the subdivision that Tom Wilson was referring to would continue to stay in the town of Middleton, where the residents and land would be served by MMSD, but presumably the sewage system would continue to be managed and operated by the city of Madison.
Tom, it's
Okay.
27 and 32.
27 and 32? Okay.
Yep, Burke is 32, Blooming Grove is 27.
Okay, so that's longer
I'm
than I
like
thought.
95% sure about that.
Yep. Okay. I was just bringing that up. I had thought that Blooming Grove was closer because I thought that was approved about the time that Town of Madison was, but I must have been mistaken for the 20 years. And the thinking was that maybe two of those kind of go away in the short term, two of the three towns. Okay, does anybody else have any other comments they wish to add? We've had a very good discussion of points made on both sides.
Yeah, I guess I would like to add a comment. I originally supported the staff recommendation and continue to do so. I think that it makes more sense to try to be more inclusive of the municipalities that have land within the district and have land, residents, and businesses which are served by the district. Those municipalities have the ability to enter into agreements with other municipalities to, own and operate systems. The sewage system is one. There are other systems as well. And I agree with Tom Wilson's comments that they took action as a municipality to have their systems operated by the city of Madison. But I think that it feels to me that they are operating as owners within the context that we've been talking about. So I continue to support the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Brad. Sarah had her hand up, and then Tom's got his hand up again.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So I was persuaded originally, thanks for speaking, Brad, because you were the one who persuaded me originally, this appointment authority, the power of the appointment authority being so important to that concept of accountability. And that's what still resonates for me, not in the, I agree completely with what Commissioner Foster said on our accountability, and the accountability of the district has to lie with all of the places that we're serving and that are creating us. But when I think about owners and I think about the commission and who we're accountable to, and thereby who the staff are accountable to, we're in charge, the commission is ultimately accountable for the district. I think a lot about representative government, right? And the person who has the ability to remove me from my role in representative governance is the mayor of the city of Madison, because that's who appointed me. So that still resonates for me pretty deeply in this concept of direct accountability for our governance and the role that we play in governance. So I appreciate the conversation, and I'm much more open to option one than I was originally based on everything that you said, Grant. That was really helpful, but I think I still feel more comfortable with staff recommendation, and it's that piece around accountability of the appointment that, and maybe it's because we were a part of the process of changing the commission and the commission appointment structure is why that resonates so much with me, but that still is the piece that's persuading me to feel more comfortable with the staff recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Tom, and then Grant has his hand up again.
And this might not be it's a little bit irrelevant, but it's just an addition. Paul said something, and again, Paul's one of the smartest people that I know, and totally respect, and somebody that I look up to and try to follow in a career. But I will say one thing. Paul did say that this was sort of a hastily put together proposition, and it was not. I think we might have worked on this for a couple years, and there were different groups that worked on it. I think the Dane County Cities and Villages was involved. The Dane County Towns Association was involved. It was certainly operated and came out of the mayor's office in the city of Madison, but they shared with all of us this whole idea about how to put this together and at different meetings. So it took some time. It wasn't like it was let's put this in the budget bill and we got to get this done and we got this language, let's throw it in there. like we see done a lot. There was some thought that was put into how this should be put together as representative of the area that the district represents. So, and Paul has a little bit more legislative experience with me. So, in a year and a half or 2 years, maybe quick and hasty, but I just wanted to point that out. This was thought out. There was some time taken. The city got involved and presented it to the outlying communities to get their support before they actually went to the legislature.
You're muted, Tom, but I'm thinking maybe you're.
I'm sorry, Grant, I just had a question. Did Mary Swanson leave the meeting? I don't see her name anywhere, so, okay. Grant, go ahead.
Thanks. I guess also, could someone just clarify for me, so in our current model of customer, does the district send bills to town of Blooming Grove and town of Burke and town of Milton, excuse me?
This bill, we do not. The billing process is tied to the language in our sewer use ordinance, which is specifically about the individual customer sending waste.
Those customers defined essentially in line with option 1.
Yes, and I'll add to that point. This is, I guess I'm repeating the point about statutory construction. One of the factors that I think Commissioner Murphy focused on is sending wastewater is one aspect of community's relationship with us. Regional development, businesses that grow and are able to be served is another aspect. So our bills are tied specifically to the revenue recovery model, which at the moment is wastewater driven.
Right. And let's say in the city of Madison, to the degree that its sewer utility, it has the relationship then with those municipalities or those directly the customers themselves to recoup the costs that we're actually charging to the city of Madison sewer utility then, right?
Yes, similar to how it's done with industrial customers. Some communities have very large industrial customers and they work out some sort of an agreement with how our charges will be passed on.
Okay. So, and I think I hadn't mentioned that before, but it really has been a big part of my thinking on this as well. And it's part of why I believe, again, it really our current understanding of customer, and I think it's more than just simply an accounting question. The fact is that our owners are those municipal utilities, and the fact that they may provide service and that we provide service to properties within other municipalities does not create an ownership relationship. And I'll again reinforce that I do not believe that lack of being included in the ownership definition to me is not about accountability, and it's not about excluding them from being critical partners. And I don't believe it should in any way shape our relationship with them in those regards. And I definitely hear what Commissioner Wilson is saying, and I get all of that. And to me, my advocacy for this definition is not about excluding any of those communities, but the reality is that they're not legally owners. And just the actions that we took today around our rate setting, et cetera, those are all things that are directly, we're accountable to the people that we're sending the bills to in terms of our rates, et cetera. And they then are passing those on to folks in other municipalities. So it really, the state of Wisconsin has jurisdiction over the capital. Are they an owner because they're an entity within the MMSD service area? They don't have appointing authority, but there's sewage coming from there. And how is that handled? I think it doesn't make sense to include a municipality who is not actually part of our unified sewer system. I think that the district itself is essentially a cooperative between municipal sewer systems. And the whole point of all the work that we do is to handle that processing more efficiently, more effectively on behalf of those owners. And the fact that other municipalities might be served by that, I do not believe constitutes ownership in the district. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Grant. Anyone else? There's 2 points I want to make. The first is I think back to our discussion when Jim Martin was on the commission, and he had the concern about what's going to happen over time as rural subdivisions get beyond their primary waste site, their secondary waste site, and they need something else. And he was concerned, I think, particularly about the town of Middleton. And what will happen is, what obligation do we have to serve, the rural subdivisions that add, changes. If you're not currently within the district boundary, obviously that has effects on capacity of interceptors and everything like that. The second thing I wanted to make as an observation is that when we originally were the commission back a few years ago, when the whole policy handbook decided on its definition, it used the term customer communities and ratepayers. So in a sense, it kind of split it's split the cat, so to speak, because obviously I do tend to agree with Grant that there were customer communities, and that if I had thought of customer communities, my mind wouldn't have occurred to think of the town of Middleton. We didn't go through this type of detail of trying to pick out at that point what town or city, village, whatever was in. But then when you added in the term ratepayers, is what we had added in, then it gets me to think that, well, the individual customers that are in the town of Middleton are a ratepayer to the city of Madison's system, or will be those that we've added. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking, and it was low on my priority list. Everybody else had it much higher to review the whole definition. But I'm thinking here that maybe our original definition wasn't that bad. And I know we went through some great deal of discussion on it a few meetings ago. So I'm kind of torn, because when I like to look back at what our precedent was and what our first decision was. And then I kind of see that went both ways. And I don't know if that was the intention when we did it, but I think we were trying to give by the use of the term ratepayer, we were trying to give some credence to those individual ratepayers. So, okay, anybody else have any questions? Okay, let's see here. Oh, Grant, sorry.
Sorry, I just one other point based on what you said, Tom. So, again, today we saw the Septage, users, and heard that they're basically now the equivalent of a municipality's worth. And they're, where do they fit in that? And I think we have not been talking about them as owners, but they're certainly paying, and they're directly impacted by the rates that we set. And this again to me reinforces, maybe they're a partner, they're certainly a stakeholder, they're certainly a customer of our services, but I don't believe that they are an owner of the district. And so I just don't see how the fact that an entity uses our system or is impacted by our rates should be the defining characteristic of ownership. So, thanks.
Valid point, thank you. Okay, so we have the motion, the amended, let's see, was an amendment to the motion. The amendment was, I'm just gonna find it now. There was the option that was identified And I guess I can, let me move this over. Sorry about this. It was option 1. And that's that was an amendment to the original motion. So the original motion was to approve basically the staff recommendation, then it was amended and we never got, was not, I'm sorry, not amended, but there was a motion and a second to amend it. And so we're going to be voting on the amendment, which is resolution, which is basically option 1, that changes that definition of own and operate. Okay, so I think I've got that correct. Everybody understand? Okay. I'm thinking we want to do a roll call on this, Janelle. So an I would be in favor of the amendment, which is option 1, and an A would be against the amendment. Okay?
Okay. Okay. You are correct, in fact, that Commissioner Mary Swanson has left the meeting. So we are down to 7. So Commissioner Bookland,
Aye.
Commissioner Eskridge,
No.
Commissioner Foster,
Aye.
Commissioner Hobble,
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Murphy,
No.
Commissioner Wilson,
No.
so you are 4 ayes and 3 nays, Commissioner Hubble.
Okay, thank you very much, Janelle. So the motion to amend carries on a 4-3 vote. And so that takes us back to basically approving the whole resolution as amended. If I got the procedure correct on this. Okay, so it takes us back to now approving basically the whole thing as is amended, but to include option 1. So do we have let's see, do we need a motion to approve that, or is it just, no, we don't, because it was already made. So it takes us back to the original motion, and that has been amended, so the amendment's been approved. So do we have any further comments or discussion on the final approval of the changes to the handbook?
Commissioner Hobble,
Yes, Sarah.
I'm just going to explain that I'm going to, in advance, that I'm going to vote aye on this. And it's a little bit confusing because I just voted nay, but I wanted to state that it's because I believe, I appreciated both perspectives, and it's clearly the will of the commission that we adopt as amended. So I'm happy to support the will of the commission in the final vote.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the handbook as amended, say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Was that Commissioner Wilson?
Yes, it was.
Thank you.
So the motion approving that carries. So that ends that item on the commission policy handbook. That takes us to the chief engineer and director's report.
Thank you, President Hubble. I have 2 items very briefly for you. I want to congratulate Commissioners Eskridge and Foster for being reappointed for another 3-year terms to the commission. I just received communication from the mayor's office this week, and I just want to congratulate you on your appointments for another 3-year terms. The second thing is we had a small treatment facility overflow, about 5 gallons on the plant grounds Sunday morning, 12:30 a.m. It was foaming sludge that exited the top of a mixer, and less than 1 gallon made it to the ground because our alarm systems went off, and our operators who work, around the clock were quick to respond to it. DNR was notified at 10 a.m. and that same morning. So that concludes my report for today.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Paul, regulatory review?
We're running late, so I'll make this brief. In terms of legal services for the past month, we worked on a number of contract issues, including a non-disclosure agreement on the UV system, some Ostera contracts, an ATC easement issue. On the regulatory front, it's been mostly disinfection, getting that teed up, and monitoring PFAS issues. I will note, in terms of regulatory update, and many of you probably saw this in the paper this morning, the Natural Resources Board did approve the emergency rule for firefighting foam and NR 159, but it was on a split vote, and that now goes to the legislature, which may or may not approve it. We will continue to follow that and other regulatory developments. So I think with that, I'll stop unless there's other questions.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Any questions? Okay, hearing none. Operations report? Eric? Or is he?
That would be Alan.
Okay, Alan, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
You're good. I'm just trying to bring up, share my screen here. Can you see that?
I can see it. I can hear you too.
Good, good. Okay, so for the operations report, you got the full report in the dashboard or in the packet. There really wasn't anything particular note on the September performance. Was good, back in line with the plant restoration following some of the let me spell it out, liquid processing improvements. We've been referred to it in the shorthand as LPI. But it's the major improvements for the hydraulics we've been working on. So as you recall, in August, we did have an excursion with high ammonia. September, we're down with our CBOD numbers. Effluent is really good. Ammonia numbers are coming back in line. The other thing to note is in September, our ammonia permit goes up too. So we are allowed a higher number coming out on that. So phosphorus, fecals, everything right exactly where we would expect on that. Any questions on the performance for last month? And then as I go to the resource recovery dashboard, we're doing a quick check, pretty much right down the numbers we would expect. Again, kind of those just rule of thumb checkpoints, September marking 3/4 of the year gone. So, figure this is 75%, you could project that out. And so that's projecting out struvite revenue. Struvite production should be approximately 695 tons shipped by end of year. That'll give or take, but we're right in line with the last couple of years. Similar with clean water production, or what we're processing through the plant. Our actual numbers look to be in line with 2017, 2018. 2019 was a pretty wet year. So we're projecting to come in there right around 16.5 MGD for the year. Biogas production looking like that's going to come in around 290, about where we would expect. Reused effluent similarly. And the Metrogro is going to come in less than 2019 because we diverted some of that to Metromix. So our Metromix numbers are high. Metrogro is down. Total pounds or tons produced approximately the same. So any questions as it pertains to that?
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to try one quickie here. This is a special feature, and I'm not a big fan, but I mentioned the fecals. So this is actually our UV system. The system was put in 1997. This was actual moment of power off on October 16th. So we made it successfully to the finish line. Thought about putting it to some dramatic music, but we didn't feel like putting time into that. But just a little trivia piece I would throw out is we have, I did a quick look at how much water has been disinfected by this unit. And of course, we don't measure that quite precisely, but a pretty close estimate is about 195 billion with a B gallons disinfected over that 23-year service life of that system. And to put that in perspective, that's enough to fill Lake Mendota approximately 1.5 times over. So that's quite a bit of water. So kind of impressive, I think. So we got good life out of that system. And with that, unless anyone has any questions, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much, Alan. Okay, that takes us to future meeting schedule, which is on future agenda topics. I wanted to discuss Zoom, but given the lateness of the hour, and I know Sarah's had to leave, I think we'll just postpone that. Commissioner Foster had asked about potentially asking people to use cameras, and I don't want to necessarily push anybody. I want to get the idea of the commission, so we can discuss that at the next meeting, provided we have time permitting. So
Commissioner Hubble, we'll just put it on the agenda for
Oh,
discussion
okay, that's a good idea.
as a standard business item.
Good, okay, that makes sense. And then do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that.
Commissioner
Second.
Wilson, second by Commissioner Murphy to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None?
Bye all.
Take care,
Motion carried.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody.
Sorry for the
Bye.
long
Stay
meeting, but we
safe
had some
out
good
there. Stay
discussions.
safe.
Stay
and
healthy.
vote.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.